Today I have the pleasure of introducing Paul Joy from myitcv.io. He's the founder there. The tour of Go gives us an excellent introduction to the Go language, but where do we go next? You need to understand the Go command to take those next steps. Wouldn't it be great if you can have some sort of interactive way to, or guides to kind of help you online and get started. So in this talk, Paul will introduce play-with-go.dev, a series of hands-on interactive browser-based guides, demonstrate the user experience, and talk about how people can contribute guides to the platform as well. Once again, that's play-with-go.dev. I'll share the link. Paul, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks for confirming. And just checking as well that everybody can see everything okay on screen as well. Please shout if not. Thanks so much to the host today for organizing this event. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I've got the amazingly challenging task of following Bill Kennedy when giving a talk. I don't know that I'm going to be able to inject the same level of enthusiasm as Bill has, but Bill's a wonderful example and has been a real leader in the Go community. So thanks, Bill. But here we go. So I'm talking to you today about, so you've completed the tour of Go, what next? Quick bit of background on myself. As introduced, my name is Paul Jolly. I'm the creator of play-with-go.dev, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm currently working on the Q project. Also created GoVim, which is a Vim plugin for working with Go. I contribute to the Go project and a number of open source Go modules. I'm the organizer of the Golang Tools working group, and I was previously an organizer of the London Gophers meetup, where we've had Bill come and speak on a number of occasions. So as I said, I'm working on the Q project now. If you are in the configuration space at all or want to look at data validation, head over and take a look at that. It's an open source project that's based strongly on the Go project. This is a picture of a sleeping baby. Fair warning that during my talk, the sleeping baby may no longer be sleeping and may wake up and interrupt our presentation here. So apologies for that in advance. Also, fair warning that there is some live demos in my talk today. As with all live demos, these can go wrong. So please bear with me if that does happen. I have got some backup content in case, but just fair warning on that. So the great thing is that we're talking today about how Gophers from all levels can continue their learning journey. My talk today is a talk for Gophers of all levels. I think that's important to stress at this point, because there is really something in play-with-go.dev for all Gophers of all levels. So why are you watching this talk today? Hopefully you're interested because you found Go in some way, shape or form, and you're interested in the Go programming language and you want to learn more about it. Maybe you're not quite sure on where to go next with your journey in the Go programming language. Maybe you found Go as a result of the go.dev website, which is a new hub that pulls together all the sort of the key parts of Go, the project, linking to documentation, case studies from companies who are using Go. Maybe you found Go via the open source project, golang.org. Maybe you're interested in contributing to the open source project as well. Maybe you found Go via learn.go.dev, which is a new hub for all the essential documentation and learning material. Lots of the talks we had earlier on from Nils about exorcism, John's Gopher sizes, they're linked from learn.go.dev. It's an excellent place to start your learning journey. Maybe you just like Gophers, and there's plenty of them. Who doesn't like Gophers, by the way? Maybe you're local, and I'll put that in brackets because, of course, in the world we're living in today, there isn't really a concept of a local meetup at the moment. But your local meetup, Bill spoke eloquently there about the power of meetups and the way they can introduce you to like-minded people, people with whom you can share ideas, people who can challenge you, lead you along different paths of learning. Meetups are an excellent way of doing that. Least of all because the proximity that they people who live in your local area are often a very good resource, because actually they're easy to get hold of and easy to meet in times when actually we can meet up. But the online meetups, some of these local meetups have shifted to being fully online now, and there's still excellent presentations, presenters who can give you ideas on how to continue your learning journey. But there's a fairly high chance that actually, if you looked at Go even briefly, you will have ended up looking at the tour of Go. Now this, if you haven't seen it, the link is at the top of the slides here, and all the links will be available at the end here. This is an interactive browser-based, so you just fire up your browser and go to tour.golang.org. It's an interactive tour of the Go programming language itself. It's divided into a number of sections that explain the language. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, there's an interactive element where you can actually write code and learn the language as you go. And this is really beneficial because there's actually zero setup required in this situation. You can just get started and just go at your own pace as well, learning the language step by step. It's very well structured. And over the years, contributions from folks have helped to improve the content, the structure of it. So it's an excellent starting point. But it's a starting point and it covers the programming language itself. So what if you want to go beyond the programming language and actually start writing something with Go yourself? Where do you go next? We talked earlier on about the fact that there's learn.go.dev, which provides you links to lots of different resources. But maybe you're not quite sure yet. You don't really want to go to the hassle of setting something up locally yourself. You want to just get a feel for what writing Go code looks like. And this is where play-with-go comes in. It's a hands-on set of interactive guides for programming in Go. The idea being that it's, again, browser-based, interactive like the tour of Go, but it's going to that next level of introducing the tools that are required to work with a Go programming language. It's the next step after the tour of Go, therefore, but it embraces all those really good qualities of the tour of Go, of being interactive, because that's what makes things fun, and it just can be entirely self-paced as well. As I mentioned earlier on, it's also aimed at all levels of Gophers as well, and we'll see that later on. But for those people who are new to the Go programming language, it's a really good way of taking that next step from the tour of Go to getting your hands dirty with the actual tools required to write Go. It's something that is by the community for the community, and we'll talk about this a bit later on as well. But even though it looks like an official Go project website, it's actually not. It's an open source project that is sponsored by the Go team. And it is entirely open source, and it's by the community, those folks who are not part of the core Go team. But anyone who is in the Go community, even those folks on the Go team, can actually contribute to it as well. It's based on Play with Docker. And my colleague Marcos, who helped write Play with Go, was one of the original authors of Play with Docker. And as I said, it's sponsored by the Go team, in particular Carmen, and who has given huge support to this project. So a big thank you to Carmen. But that's enough of me talking, because I've threatened a live demo, and this is where it could go horribly wrong. So here we go. So hopefully everybody can see this demo as well. This is us actually now on the Play with Go guides index, which is where we can see the guides that are currently listed on the Play with Go website. It's broken into sections here where you can see you've got a start here section followed by next steps, and then a what's coming in Go 116. Each of these little cards here represents a link to a guide. Gives you a rough indication of, broadly speaking, how long it might take to get through that guide. But these are very just broad indications, because as I said, there's no stress. You can go entirely at your own pace. There's a fairly limited amount of content on here, but as I said, this is play-with-go.dev is just getting started, and it's something of an experiment as well to see whether this sort of interactive learning environment actually works for people or not. So that's the guides index itself. Oops, excuse me, we've clicked on a slide there. Now let's actually have a look at a guide itself. And this is the first guide, which is getting started with Go. This is based on an official getting started tutorial that you will find through the learn.go.dev documentation site. It links through to the official golang.org documentation. So here is a Play with Go guide. On the left-hand side, you've got what looks like the guide material itself. And on the right-hand side, let's just tidy this up a bit here. This is an interactive terminal that is connected to real remote compute resources. In fact, this is a virtual machine that is running within the Google Cloud. On the left-hand side here, as I said, we've got the actual guide itself, and we've got these code blocks here, which if we just hover over them, you might be able to see that this is clickable as well. So as we're going through this guide, this is just an introduction here to getting started with Go itself. So first of all, we've got this code block here. Well, it's not a code block, it's a command block, excuse me. If we click on it, it actually executes in the right-hand side. Right-hand side, I can even type in this command as well if I want to, but the left-hand side is guiding us through in a step-by-step way what the particular guide is interested in introducing to us. In this case, it's just literally the bare basics, the bare bones of getting started with Go. So here we've just printed the Go version. We can also print what directory we're currently in at the moment. We can create ourselves a new directory. Now we're just going to create a file, hello.go. And as you can see, it just presents a little status message to tell us that that file was successfully created. And guess what? Go is available within this remote virtual machine. And so we can run that example as well. Fantastic, it's printed hello world to us. Just moving a bit further on, here now we're going to actually incorporate an external package within our little program. It's a fairly familiar one to those people, a fairly familiar example to those who have read some of the Go documentation before. It's a quote package that allows us to include some nice pithy quotes in our output. So let's just change the file that we created here. Again, we've updated the hello.go file, and you can see after clicking on the code block on the left-hand side, it's updated in our remote session. Initialize ourselves a module, then get the quote package. Just wait for that to download. And now run the new example. So now we've incorporated, and we can just confirm this. Here is our updated Go file over here. And this is what we just ran as well, which is using this new quote package. So here, this is with zero setup, we've jumped into an interactive tool, an interactive guide that is demonstrating to us how to use the tools of the Go programming language. In this case, the Go command. To create a module, create a very simple example that imports an external package. We've used go-get to get that package and then run it finally. So you can see it's fantastically, you can go at your own pace, but at the same time, the interactivity lends itself very well to the learning of the tools. Let's just leave this guide and go back to the presentation. So what do we just see there? As I said, there's zero setup required here. So much like the tour of Go is a zero setup introduction to the language itself, this is a zero setup introduction to the tools that are required to work with Go, but using real compute resources as well, which is incidentally why you need to authenticate with play-with-go.dev if you land on the site. There are real compute resources here, so we want to be careful not to abuse the sponsorship that we've had, because otherwise it would be an open compute resource. So this really reduces the barrier to getting started with Go. Once you've learned the language, you can get yourself familiar with the tools required for the programming language too. And as Carmen Ando said in her closing keynote of GopherCon 2020, it's sites like this and tools like this that are really designed to help try and encourage the next 1 million, 2 million, 4 million Gophers. Get them started and familiar with the language in an easy way in different formats of presentation of this sort of material as well. So some people might not like this sort of interactive tutorial. That's absolutely fine. But for those who do, and they enjoy the tour of Go and they enjoy going at their own pace, it's a really good, easy way of getting started. This can even run on mobile. So if you just want to have a quick interactive walk through how to create your own module, it's fantastic for that. As I said before, you can go at your own pace. And the focus of all these things, as John mentioned in his talk earlier on, is this should be fun. And so this might not be for you, but if it is, fantastic. It is all about being fun. And as I said, play-with-go.dev is an experiment. Please give us feedback if there's things that you think we can improve. Let's have another look at another demo. This is a slightly more involved one where we're actually going to create a module and publish a module as well. So not only, as you saw in the first demo, we actually created some files in our remote virtual machine and we ran those. Fantastic. We also used GoGet to get an external module that was downloaded from the proxy. So this remote virtual machine is fully connected as if it were our own local machine, which is great. So let's just quickly skip through this bit here. We're just printing out the working directory here, creating ourselves a directory for a module that we're going to publish. We init that module with GoMod init. We can just prove to ourselves that we've actually created the go.mod for the module. We create ourselves a file, greetings.go. That's a package which will have a very simple function, hello, which will give us a nice greeting in return when we call that function. So now we've created our package here. Let's just improve it a tiny bit here by using, and you can see here in the play-with-go.dev guides, if we're updating a file, it highlights where the changes are made in the file. So as the reader, you can easily understand, as you follow through the guide, what's actually happening. And then as the documentation here will refer back to these bits in bold here to tell you what has changed. So here you can see the file has been updated as we've clicked on the code block. Now what we're going to do is initialize a Git repository on our remote VM. We've added a remote in that step as well. We're going to add the files and create a commit. And now we're actually going to push this commit. So where on earth is this commit just been pushed? Let's just come back to that in a second. Now we're going to create another module very quickly to use that hello module, the greetings module, excuse me, that we just created. We're just going to create GoMod init, this new module, and we're going to go get the greetings package, the greetings module that we just published. So this is pretty impressive because with zero setup, zero local setup, not only have we been able to use the Go tool itself, but here we've also published a real live Go module as well, with zero accounts required on GitHub or any other code hosting system. And so for someone who's keen to understand how to work with the Go programming language and its tools, this is a fantastically easy way. And look, we just click through these. Again, you can go at this at your own pace, but we click through this fairly quickly. And you can you already get a feel for what the life cycle of Go modules is, how things work end to end without having to go through any local setup. So let's just leave this guide for 1 second and go back to the presentation. So what did we just see there? As I said, we published a real Go module to a remote source code repository. That really does give a strong feeling of how programming in Go should work. And if you're just getting started, sometimes that's a bit of a daunting hill to climb. You can read lots of documentation, but until you actually see it happening in front of you, it's a little hard to wrap your head around. Yes, there are some video presentations that explain it, but if you're able to click through a guide again at your own pace, that's a much easier hill to climb sometimes. Again, zero setup required for any of this. So let's take a look at another. This is a slightly different example of a guide here. And this is aimed at those Gophers who have slightly more experience. Because not only is Play with Go a platform for those who are just getting started with the language, it's also a way of demonstrating and showcasing things that are useful in the Go programming language. And we'll see one of these now with a new feature that is just about to land in Go 1.16 when that's released. And that's called module retraction. So this guide does introduce module retraction. And that's just, for those who are familiar with modules, if you accidentally publish a version of a module, you can then retract that version. So here is it's a totally different way, a totally different style of guide where this isn't so much an introduction to Go, the language itself, or any of the tooling. This is showcasing something that is coming up in the Go programming language. And this kind of guide is not limited to things that the Go team produce as part of the Go project. Tools that exist out there, like Static Check, for example, could also showcase themselves on play-with-go.dev. So think to yourself, what would you like to understand better that would lend itself well to this sort of presentation? We'd love to get your feedback. And if you go to play-with-go.dev, you can link through to our Twitter account there or the GitHub project where you can get in touch with us by raising an issue. because we're trying to understand what kind of content works well in this kind of interactive learning platform. Let's jump back to the presentation. As I said, so what did we just see there? This showcasing of features is a totally different use of Play with Go, but we're open to all sorts of things. Just so long as it is Go related, we'd be very interested to consider what it is you'd like to see presented there, whether it be a guide that is a real tutorial or something that is like Showcase or something totally different. So what other content lives on play-with-go.dev? As I just said, really anything Go related. But let's just look at the key focus points here. Core Go tooling, GoFumt for formatting your code, GoTest. John Calhoun mentioned that he would be interested in writing a guide, for example, that explains to people how to use GoTest. That's just a basic primer on how to start writing tests in Go. And you can sort of easily understand now how in an interactive presentation that would actually work. Go build, go vet, all the core Go tools. It's a really good platform for introducing modules, as we saw, because you can actually publish modules as part of the Play with Go platform. And that, as far as other tutorials is concerned, is a real win, because a lot of those get to a point where you need to push something to a remote source code repository, and they say, at this point, git push and ... There's a sort of a bit of a gap left there. But with play-with-go.dev guides, you can see it's a full end-to-end experience. You can click through and see the process from beginning to end. I mentioned static check. Tools like that help with code analysis are fantastic things to present and understand via an interactive tool like Play with Go. So please let us know, what other tools do you want to see as part of guides on the site? As I said, we looked at a demonstration of a new Go feature. Honestly, any sort of demonstration would lend itself well to this sort of interactive presentation. Please get in touch and let us know. So who can contribute to play-with-go.dev? Absolutely anybody. I mentioned before, it's an open source project, even though it looks quite official in that we're using the Go styling. It is entirely open source project. It's entirely separate from Google as well. So that way, the really is very open to anybody contributing with a very generous license that's part of the project as well. It's a content creation platform as well. So with every guide that is part of play-with-go.dev, it's fully automatically tested. So we can be very confident that at any point in time, each of those guides is entirely reproducible. And so as an author of the content, it helps, the tooling that we have on the platform helps. And as a user of the guide, someone who's clicking through, you can be really confident that it's actually going to work. We're in the process of writing a guide that explains how to write a guide, which should help those people who are considering writing content for play-with-go.dev. So what plans do we have for play-with-go.dev? Well, one of the key things would be getting an editor integrated in the browser, and VS Code is going to allow us to do that. So that's something we're looking to get to in 2021. If people would like to sponsor that effort financially, or indeed contribute expertise to that, please do get in touch. We'd like to extend it to be multiple platforms. As you've seen at the moment, the remote session, the remote virtual machine, excuse me, for each guide is Linux-based. But there's actually nothing really stopping us having that be a remote Mac OS session or a remote Windows session. That just, again, requires a bit of investment and a considerable amount of time in that case. But it's something that's entirely doable. And as Bill Kennedy has given feedback on this in the past, we're going to see a lot more Gophers in the years to come be coming from a Windows background. So that sort of support would be key. And we're also open to adapting the play-with-go.dev tooling to write guides and documentation for other tools and other projects. It would be hosted in an entirely different setup, but that's something we would happily consider. So here is a screenshot of what it might look like to have VS Code integrated within the browser. It would be fantastic to just be able to click on a code block on the left and have that populate a file within VS Code in the remote virtual machine on the right-hand side. So how can you get involved? Well, as with so many Go projects, one of the best things to do is actually to use the package, use the module, whatever it is. In this case, use the play-with-go.dev website. Help review content. If you spot issues there, please raise an issue with us on in the GitHub repository. happily fix it. Or if you want to contribute a fix, please do that too. There's many different ways to contribute to the Play with Go project itself. As you've seen, there's multiple parts to it here. The website and the front end. Marcos and I are absolutely not experts on that, and so any help would be greatly appreciated. The infrastructure side of things, maybe you want to help out with the tooling that is involved with from a guide author's perspective. Maybe you're keen to support the Play with Docker project on which Play with Go is based. Or perhaps you're interested in writing content. You have an idea for a guide. Whatever it is, please get in touch via Twitter or raise an issue with us on the GitHub repository. So that is play-with-go.dev. That is the end of my talk today, I think. Yes, I'm just checking. Please visit the site. Please give it a try. And if you have any feedback, we would love to hear about it. And I'll very happily take any questions now, and we'll certainly hang around in the Slack channel afterwards.